I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
Hello, guys. Happy Friday. Doobie-doobie-doo. We made it to the weekend. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know you can find Sabby Sabs on Revolutionary Blackout Network as well. I have a show there called Sabby's Show. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Roundtable and Friday for the Sabby Sabs Show. And you can catch me here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Quick shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. Welcome. I want to give a shout out also to people who are Sabby patrons. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you for reals. If you're interested, you can become a Sabby patron. I have 4 categories: members, Sabbies, and Sabsters. All of their names are listed here. And I want to give a quick shout out to Little Puppet, who just became a Sabby patron. Thank you so much. And their names are also scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. I want to give quick shout outs to people in the chat. Sing at Night says Sabs, a Saturday night show. Today is Friday. Unless you are abroad in a different country, maybe. Shout out to Hannah G says Sabby with a smiley face. What's going on? Aspen Fallen says, smush that like, y'all. Smush it. Shout out to myself here. This is actually pinned at the top of the live chat comments. The call-in portion of this show will start at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll still be here on YouTube, but you'll be able to call in through the call-in app, just like I did last Friday. Eric and I worked out some kinks. They worked out some bugs on their end, on the call-in, the app end. So should go smoother tonight. What's going on? GA Freckles says, sup family, Sabby. Hope everyone is well. Shout out to Leroy, who's a Sabby member, just like GA Freckles is as well, says smushed. What's going on? Eric T. Red, who's a Sabby member, says, hey there, Lefty Friday friends. What's going on? Little Rock Elevator says, Congress doesn't deserve a raise. The American people deserve the raise. I agree. We are going to get into that tonight. What's going on? Lawrence, who's a Sabby member, says doobie-doobie-doo. Shout out to Fee, says, am I reading this correctly? Congress gets a raise. How have they helped the American people in the last year? Serious question. Right? We'll get into it. Shout out to Sweary Fairy, says, it's white girl dancing, but whatevs, LOL. Okay. Shout out to Janice, says, hi all. What's going on? Gamer says, hello. Greetings, Eric Gray says, we're back for more action-packed fun. What's going on? Delthea Simmons, who's a Sabby member, says, hey. Shout out to Elizabeth, says, Status Coup mentioned your interview with Nick Brana yesterday. Yes, I did. I got to see the live stream of that earlier today. So that was really good to note. Don't worry about it, Eric. I'll find it in my email. Yeah, it's weird sometimes. Shout out to Yasmin, says, hi, everyone. Happy Friday. Greetings, Miguel says, peace. What's going on? Joe OWS says, good evening. Shout out to Sean M, said, just got paid Friday night party jumping. You guys remember that song? I forget the original person who sang that song, but NSYNC actually did a remake of that song. Friday night. What's going on? I hate work 420 says, hi, Sabby. What's going on? I hate work. Shout out to Yipper99. Woohoo! Celebration emoji. What's going on? Notori says, Moon Prism Power. Shout out to U.S. Atlantic Creole African American Freedman, says, peace family. Sorry, guys. There's a lot of comments. Shout out to Lo-Fi Mid said, can't stand Jussie Smollett and what he did was awful. But the fact that he got sentenced and Bill Cosby is free is kind of BS. I feel your frustration. I feel your pain. All right, what are we talking about tonight? Let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to share my thumbnail here. Do 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 do. All right, tonight we are talking about Max Blumenthal confronts Ro Khanna. That is an interesting conversation. I wasn't sure if Ro Khanna was trying to run away in that video or if he was just walking fast, but can't wait to get into that. We're talking about Jussie Smollett sentencing that happened earlier today. I'm going to show a video about that and get your opinion. And we're going to talk about Congress gets a raise. Yes, you are not going to be happy about that. And that story is actually going to lead into the call-in segment of the show, which is the class divide. So I actually want to go ahead and get started with the Jussie Smollett story. So let's go ahead and start with that one, Eric. I'm going to start with the article first, and then I'll go into the video. And I'll grab that link for the Max Blumenthal. Sometimes Twitter is weird like that. Like I actually put, let's see. Oh, that tweet was deleted. That's okay if the tweet was deleted because honestly, like, the video is more so what I need. But yeah, I was just going to point to that, but that's okay. All right, let's go ahead and get started with this article. Now, Jussie Smollett, I just want to refresh everyone's memory because this has been going on for a couple of years now. A couple of years ago, Jussie Smollett said that he was attacked outside with a couple of men who were Trump supporters. They yelled MAGA at him. They threw bleach on him, beat him up. 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, a lot of us, well, some of us, Dave Chappelle brought this out, said that a lot of African Americans, we were just sitting back like, yeah, he's probably lying. It is true. Like, that's how I felt. I was like, something about this story is odd. So that happened a couple of years ago. And then going forward, this case has kind of been pending. There are 2 guys who came forward who actually knew Jussie Smollett. Apparently, they worked with him in Empire. I think they might have been his trainers or something like that. But they came forward and said that Jussie Smollett actually paid them to attack him. Apparently, he wrote them a check. I don't know why he decided to do that. Checks are traceable. But he wrote them a check and they had a copy of that. So they were able to prove that he gave them that money, and that they basically said, like, look, like, he asked us to do this job. We did this job, which was really disappointing because Chicago PD basically went on a manhunt looking for 2 MAGA guys that were not present, that were not involved with this story. So he used police resources when they could have been used doing something else. So that was a big uproar. Chicago PD was not happy with him. The mayor of Chicago wasn't happy with him, although we can say things about her as well. But he was finally given his sentence. And so I'm going to share that with you. Okay. Oh, Eric. I'm not sure. Okay. Yeah, I think there was an echo. Oh, okay. Thanks. Okay. So I am going to go ahead and go through this article. So here we go. Jussie Smollett sentenced 150 days in jail for lying to police in a hate crime hoax. My God, this was a terrible story. All right, so here we go. Former Empire actor Jussie Smollett was sentenced Thursday to 30 months of felony probation, including 150 days in jail. in order to pay restitution of more than $120,000 and $25,000 fine for making false reports to police that he was the victim of a hate crime in January 2019. So this goes all the way back to 2019, you guys. After the judge announced his sentence, Smollett lowered his face mask and said that he was innocent. Your Honor, I respect you. I respect the jury, but I did not do this. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, he's still saying that. I'm going to skip down a little bit because some of this is in the video that you'll see. Just before he was taken into custody, the actor yelled again that he was innocent and raised a fist into the air. This is so dramatic, you guys. I'm sorry. Wait till you see the video. Here we go. There's a side of you that has this arrogance and selfishness and narcissism that just disgraceful. Now that's coming from the judge. He said, you are not a victim of a real hate crime. You're not a victim of a homophobic hate crime. You're just a charlatan pretending to be the victim of a hate crime. And that's shameful. The judge ordered Smollett to be held in protective custody by Smollett's request and the court's recommendation. On Friday, the actor on Friday, the actor was being housed in his own cell, which is monitored by security cameras in the cell and by an officer wearing a body-worn camera who was stationed at the entrance of the cell to ensure that Mr. Smollett is under direct observation at all times. The office stressed Smollett was not being held in solitary confinement, noting he is entitled to substantial time out of his cell and is able to use a telephone, watch TV, and interact with staff. Yeah. See, ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when you're a celebrity. Do you think everyday Joe Schmoes that are in jail get to have those types of privileges? I don't know here. I don't think so. I don't think so. He can use a telephone. He can watch TV and interact with staff. Yes, Leroy, Club Fed for the celebrities. Absolutely. Lawrence Johnson said it sounds like a vacation. Right? Yeah. So this is really interesting. Let's go back in. Social justice figures. Now, this part really gets me. Social justice figures urge for leniency. Smollett, 39, was found guilty in December on 5 counts of felony disorderly conduct for making false reports about what he said was an anti-gay, anti-black hate crime. The actor, who is black and gay, told Chicago police that on a frigid night in January 2019, 2 unknown men attacked him, yelled racist and homophobic slurs at him, poured bleach on him, and wrapped a noose around his neck. By the way, this was supposed to be at 3 o'clock in the morning. So it goes on to say, I want to skip down here. Smollett's attorneys argued that he should be given a more lenient punishment, such as probation, citing his lack of criminal history and community service he has performed. They read several letters which attested to that part of his life. Before announcing the sentence, the judge also spoke of the leading figures in social justice circles that asked for a lenient sentence for Smollett. You do have quite a record of real community service and quite a record of attaching with people. The judge said, I'm mindful of pleas of mercy, particularly from people that are in the arena. But ultimately, the judge said this act showed Smollett's dark side. Yeah. His sister, by the way, in a news conference following the sentencing, Smollett's brother, Jojo Smollett, this is his brother, but his sister, some of you may know, she's an actress also. But his brother said, I told reporters he was disappointed with the outcome. He shamed my brother. He spoke about his arrogance. He doesn't know the struggles my brother is encountering. He doesn't know anything that he's dealing with. And this is where I have to come out of here. I would not necessarily say that the judge shamed Jussie Smollett. I think when Jussie Smollett created this wild ass, stupid story, I think he shamed himself. This story to me never really made any sense. Why would there just be two guys standing on the corner at 3 o'clock in the morning in Chicago in the middle of winter, mind you? And if you've ever been to Chicago during the winter, you know how cold Chicago can be. So the fact that he said there was just some random guys who just happened to be hanging out on the corner at 3 o'clock in the morning in Chicago, just waiting for him. And they're standing there with bleach and rope, and nobody sees these guys and think that this is strange. That was just, it was so weird to me. That was strange. So this issue, I feel like he put this on himself. I feel like he did this for more attention, which to me didn't make any sense at the time. Jussie Smollett was on one of the most popular television shows on TV. He was on Empire. He was actually one of the favorite characters. If you asked a lot of people who their favorite character was, they either said Lucius, Cookie, or Jussie's character. So it's really a shame that it came to this. I want to show you the video. So let's go ahead and get into that. This is the courtroom scene after he received his sentencing. So
I would just like to say to Your Honor that I'm not suicidal. That's what I would like to say.
Okay.
I'm not suicidal.
Okay.
I am not.
Do you have any questions?
All right.
No, I would just like to say to Your Honor that I'm not suicidal. That's what I would like to say.
Okay.
I'm not suicidal.
Okay.
I am not suicidal. I am innocent, and I am not suicidal. If I did this, then it means that I stuck my fist.
I'm sorry. I'm going to share this through another tab just because the video goes kind of slow on that platform. So give me just a second. I'm going to pull up the other video. Okay, here we go.
Do you have any questions?
Okay, here we go. So let me share it from a different tab because it moves kind of slow when I do it through that system. So here we go.
No, I would just like to say to Your Honor that I'm not suicidal. That's what I would like to say.
Okay.
I'm not suicidal.
Okay.
I am not suicidal. I am innocent, and I am not suicidal. If I did this, then it means that I stuck my fist in the fears of Black Americans in this country for over 400 years and the fears of the LGBTQ community. Your Honor, I respect you and I respect the jury, but I did not do this. And I am not suicidal. And if anything happens to me when I go in there, I did not do it to myself. And you must all know that. I respect you, Your Honor. I respect your decision. Jail time. I am not suicidal.
Okay. Mr. Uche, let me inquire, are there any post-sentencing motions you care to present right now?
Yes, Judge.
Yes.
The defense would wish to present a motion to reconsider sentence and file it in standard.
It is timely filed.
Thank you, Judge.
And let me say, I've obviously considered the sentence at great length. And it's timely filed, so it's preserved for purposes of appeal. Motion to reconsider sentence is respectfully denied. And is there another, one second, Randy. Anything else? Just a second. Is there going to be a notice of appeal filed?
Yes, Judge. We found a notice of appeal. We're going to be emailing it to the clerk right now, to the office.
You doing it in standard? And
In standard.
are you going to be handling the appeal?
Judge, as of now, yes.
Well, you have to commit to.
Yes, Judge. Yes, we're filing a notice of appeal.
All right, notice of appeal may be filed. Charlotte, and now I need the prosecutors to work with Charlotte, the probation officer, to work out probation specifications with the conditions I just explained. 150 days in the county jail, restitution of fines, and also statutory DNA and cost order as well. That's statutory. So you have to fill out the probation specifications. I'm going to get somebody to help you do that. We need to get that done on standards.
Your Honor,
Anything else?
Your Honor, if I may, in light of the notice of appeal, we would ask that you would suspend the jail sentence in light of the in-stancher filing of the notice of appeal.
Did I do what?
Suspend the jail sentence in light of the notice of filing of appeal.
Okay, so this part right here, she's asking the judge if he would suspend the jail sentence. They're trying to do an appeal. They've already mentioned appeal. Keep in mind, the two brothers, they're from Nigeria. The two brothers that he asked to do this, again, he wrote a check. There's video of them going into the store to buy the supplies. So it's like, so should he get any type of special treatment because he's a celebrity? She's like, just suspend the jail sentence. Really? Let's go back into the video.
That will be respectfully denied.
Your Honor,
Yes, ma'am.
if it can be stayed in light of our notice of appeal.
No, I'm not saying, no. The wheels of justice turn slowly, and sometimes the hammer of justice has to fall, and it's falling right here, right now. I'm not staying this. This happens right here, right now. Charlotte?
Judge, I know you said this that Mrs. Smollett been moved.
I'll talk to you about the meetings.
Okay.
Okay. All right, any other matters to come before the court today? All right, defendants remanded for custody sheriff. Court is adjourned.
I am not suicidal. I am not suicidal, and I am innocent. I could have said that I was guilty a long time ago.
Was that not dramatic or what? Let's see it again. Watch this.
On this particular docket, an original on this particular docket. Do you have any questions?
No, I would just like to say to Your Honor that I'm not suicidal. That's what I would like to say.
Okay.
I'm not suicidal.
Okay.
I am not suicidal. I am innocent, and I am not suicidal. If I did this, then it means that I stuck my fist in the fears of Black Americans in this country for over 400 years and the fears of the LGBTQ community. Your Honor, I respect you and I respect the jury, but I did not do this. And I am not suicidal. And if anything happens to me when I go in there, I did not do it to myself. And you must all know that.
I'm sorry. Like, is this a Shakespeare play? Like, this is so dramatic to me. I think this is a bit over the top and a bit ridiculous. No, I get it. Yes, people have these thoughts about with Jeffrey Epstein and other people, and I get it. I get it. The problem is JUSSIE SMOLLETT, he thinks he's Jeffrey Epstein or something. That's what's cracking me up about this. This is so like Shakespearean. I want you to know that I did not do it. If something happens to me, I want you to know that I did not do it myself. What? Like this is, give him an award. Give him an award. This is an actor. This is an actor. Let's look at the part at the end again. Watch. What
Court today. Defendants remanded for custody sheriff. Court is adjourned.
I am not suicidal. I am not suicidal, and I am innocent. I could have said that I was guilty a long time ago.
was that? What was that? What was that? What was that? One more outcry for the people. I am not. That was so dramatic. Guys, here's the big problem though. I think that he really believes he's telling the truth. Did you get that impression? I get this impression that he really believes what he's saying. Guys, he wrote a check. Like, I'm going to go to some of the comments in the chat. I'm going to go to some of the comments. Thanks so much for the super chat, Ashura. Is the super chat working? I need contact Google. Yes, it's working. At least here it is. Thank you so much. Yipper99 said the police got mad because they thought they could finally solve a case. Oh, Yipper99, that is so cruel. Good point, though. Sean says, well, he can use the time to do character study for it if he ever does a prison movie. Are you guys believing this? Lucky Burrito said people are locked up over a plant. This is true. This is true. Cat Terrell says the fist. He threw it up in the air all proud. I am not. Working Man says, and the Emmy goes to the rich narcissistic asshole. Where does this come from? Like, this is too much. Just too much. Long story short, I think that Jussie Smollett did this to get more attention, to get more eyes on his career. Let's be clear here and let's be fair. He got a lot of media attention for this. But again, like I said, he was on one of the most popular shows on television at that time, on network television. And I don't really watch much network TV, to be honest with you. Shows aren't good. So I don't even know. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. Dave Chappelle called him Juicy. He said Juicy Smollett. Dave Chappelle was trying to be funny. Said he was French. But how many of you, when you first heard this story, thought to yourself, does this story sound strange? Because that's the first thing I said. I watched this interview that he did. I think that was with, I forget the woman who interviewed him, but I think it was on ABC or something like that. Did a primetime interview. I watched the interview. I watched his body language. And something just seemed off to me. So this has happened. They are going to try for an appeal. I don't know if it's going to be granted or not. But I think one of the bigger problems with this situation is the fact that, number one, he wasted police resources. You do not send a police department on a manhunt for two people that don't exist just because you want attention. That's one of the issues. The other issue with this is the fact that it really made people who were anti-Trump look pretty bad. And I saw that all over social media. Because some people who were Trump supporters, they saw this and they were like, oh, so this guy lied? It really did. It's not a good look. It's not a good look. Gamer said, facts, Sabby, waste of resources on him for sure. 100%. 100%. So I don't know, man. I don't know. It's a bit ridiculous. I'm not like that's a good point. Greg Bruce says, to be fair, the police are a waste of resources. LMAO. That's a good point. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. So I don't know if there's something going on mentally there or not, but I get the impression that he really believes what he's saying. And that's the part that's concerning. So there's that. All right, it is 8:30. I want to go ahead into our next story because I want to make sure I jump on Callin at the right time. So let's get into this Max Blumenthal Ro Khanna conversation. Because I think Ro Khanna really, I had my opinions about Ro Khanna probably for like a year. I don't really consider him to be progressive, even though he says he is. And I think in this conversation, he kind of outed himself in a way and may not realize that he did that. So if we can go ahead and pull this up, here we go. So Max Blumenthal tweeted this out, and I have the actual video as well. But here's what Max said in this tweet. After campaigning on a peace platform, Ro Khanna sounds like a Bush-era neocon, spouting American exceptionalist bromance about freedom not being free. So, Eric, I'm going to go to the YouTube video because this clip is smaller than what the actual um, video has. So, if we can pull up the YouTube video, and I believe it starts at, let me see. Doobie doobie doo. How's everybody doing tonight anyway? I didn't even ask that question. Hope everybody's having a good time. 2 minutes and 35 seconds. Yep, a little bit. Yeah, you started right there. We'll just pick up from the end of that conversation. Okay, so listen to this conversation. So Max Blumenthal approaches Ro Khanna as he's walking outside. I don't know if Ro Khanna's trying to run away or what, but you really need to hear what's said in this conversation because this is very concerning what Ro Khanna says, but it does show you who Ro Khanna really is and the concerns that I had. So listen to this discussion.
Hi, Max Blumenthal from the Gray Zone. I was just wondering what you thought of the Russian oil ban.
I support the ban on oil.
So do you think that working class Americans should pay more to escalate the cost against Russia?
No, I think we need to ban the oil from Russia, and we need to reduce gas prices in this country. And the way we reduce gas prices is to say to the big oil companies, you can't be making billions of profits while gouging people at the pump.
I mean, prices are already going up massively because of the sanctions, inflation's going up, and that's all to fight Russia. I mean, that's the message Biden and his people are sending. Don't you think,
Eric?
I mean, do you think Americans, what skin in the game do Americans?
So I don't know if you guys are noticing this here, but Ro Khanna is basically repeating the same talking points that Joe Biden had. And remember, he calls himself progressive. And I've tried to tell people this before, that just because someone is a part of the progressive caucus doesn't mean they're actually progressive. So anyone can join it. It's not really a big thing. So the problem that we have here, Ro Khanna just said when Max is asking him about the oil and the gas prices, Ro Khanna, using the same talking point as Joe Biden, is saying that, well, what we need to do is we need to get these oil companies to lower their prices. Ro Khanna thinks that Max Blumenthal was born yesterday. And the reason why I say that is because I think all of us noticed that once they implemented the sanctions, the gas prices soared. And don't get me wrong, gas prices go up and down over time throughout the year. But they significantly increased after the sanctions. So Ro Khanna is trying to put this back on the oil companies and say it's their fault. They need to lower their prices. But what he doesn't mention is, why did the prices increase in the first place? So that's what Max is trying to catch him on. So I thought that was important to point out. And there's more that he goes on to say here as well. So let's go ahead and go back in.
Americans have for Ukraine.
Americans have the skin in the game to stand up for freedom, to stand up for human rights. We've always done that as a nation. And we want to make sure that we stand up for Europe and NATO, and we stand up to bullies. I mean, people see on television.
I have to pause there too. That part there where Ro Khanna says America has always been this way, that we've always been a nation that stands up for human rights. No, we haven't. Always? Really? When? Let's remember, it wasn't that long ago that gay people couldn't get married in this country. Were we standing up for human rights then? It wasn't that long ago that Black people were still under Jim Crow laws in this country, had to sit at the back of the bus, had separate communities from white people, under-resourced schools. By the way, that's still a problem. Were we standing up for human rights then? And it wasn't the nation that stood up. When you think about the civil rights movement, I've said this before, that was not popular. The majority of people did not approve of the civil rights movement. I don't know what Ro Khanna is talking about. We've always been a nation that stood up for human rights. Really? Remember when women couldn't vote? Remember when Black people couldn't vote? Remember when slaves were considered 3/4 a person? When have we really always been a nation where we stood up for human rights? Come on, Ro. Come on. You got to come back with something better. You really got to come back with something better. That doesn't fly with me. That doesn't fly. All right, I'm going to go back in.
Killing children, killing mothers. I mean, it's horrific. And we as in America, we are the greatest nation in the world. We've always stood up for freedom. We stand up for human rights.
So raising inflation and raising oil prices for freedom.
I don't think that's connected. I think.
I'm sorry, but I caught him again. He said, we've always stood up for freedom. Did you ever hear of the Civil War? What is happening here? Did we always stand up for freedom in this country? No, we did not. Spoken like a true politician. Let's go back in. There's a part here, I think, that I cut off a little bit. I'm going to go back just a second. Right about there.
For freedom, we stand up for human rights.
So raising inflation and raising oil prices for freedom.
I don't think that's connected. I think the reason that people are paying $5 at the pump and $6 at the pump is because these big oil companies are profiting billions of dollars. Why is it that they're putting the billions of dollars, because the price of oil is going up, why do they put that in with their stockholders with stock buybacks? Make sure that they are being taxed if they're fleecing the American public, and lower the gas prices. That's what we need to do.
Again, he's putting this all back on the companies, when at the end of the day, some of the same politicians that work in DC with Ro Khanna take donations from those oil companies. Who does Ro Khanna take donations from? He's not grassroots. You can look this up on Open Secrets. Really? He's putting the blame back on the companies. Never mind the fact that Joe Biden got us into this situation. He's the one who implemented the sanctions. That is why the gas prices are so high. There are people in Southern California paying $7 per gallon for gas. I got gas a couple days ago. It was $5 and some change per gallon. That's high for us here. And I'm not going to be driving anywhere anytime soon. Long story short. So again, he is ignoring the fact that the sanctions are a problem, that the sanctions are an issue. And he's trying to put the blame solely on the oil companies. Let's go back into the video.
Holders with stock buybacks, make sure that they are being taxed if they're fleecing the American public, and lower the gas prices. That's what we need to do.
Right, and you kind of ran on an anti-war peace platform. You're part of the Progressive Caucus. Do you support all the foreign fighters and weapons being sent into Ukraine, sending them aircraft, Stinger missiles, calling for an insurgency?
I was opposed to the war in Iraq because that was an unjust war. I had supported the strike in Afghanistan because those were terrorists, and I was opposed.
Busted. So Max Blumenthal just reminded Ro Khanna that he is supposed to be anti-war. That's something that Ro Khanna said about himself, that he's anti-war. But Ro Khanna just told you that, well, you know, I was against the war in Iraq. I approve of what happened in Afghanistan because those were all these exceptions and excuses. That's not anti-war. So let me get this straight, Ro Khanna. You're only anti-war under certain circumstances. So he just told you when it comes to Afghanistan, he supports that. And I told you guys that there are kids starving in Afghanistan right now because of the sanctions that have been imposed by the United States government. Ro Khanna is okay with that. Let's hear what else he says.
Then to the long years in Afghanistan, but I think that this is a just war that the Ukrainians.
So shipping more weapons and escalate.
Well, we're making sure that they are armed to be able to fight that, and the Congress is going to pass $10 billion, and I support them, their ability to stand for self-determination.
So there's the virtue signaling kind of sanction.
Let's hear that again. Let's hear that part one more time.
Because those were terrorists, and I was opposed then to the long years in Afghanistan. But I think that this is a just war that the Ukrainians.
So shipping more weapons and escalate.
Well, we're making sure that they are armed to be able to fight that, and the Congress is going to pass $10 billion, and I support them, their ability to stand for self-determination.
So there's the virtue.
So Ro Khanna just told you that he supports what's happening right now in Ukraine. And Max Blumenthal was asking him, so you support the United States sending them weapons? He goes on to say, I support them being able to defend themselves. Ro Khanna is not anti-war. Would have been better if he just said that. This is why we have to be careful when people use these organizations or these committees like the Congressional, the Progressive Caucus, because even though it has the word progressive in the title, it doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't really mean anything. I said the same thing about the CBC, the Congressional Black Caucus. I told you, just because it has black in the title doesn't mean they're trying to really do something for black people. The CBC approved and heavily pushed Joe Biden's crime bill. That was not a plus for black people. So I wish that him and Pramila Jayapal would stop pretending like they are progressive. They are not. Pramila Jayapal earlier today tweeted, we need to implement Medicare for all for people. American people need health care now. She was quickly reminded by a friend of mine, weren't you the one that said a couple of months ago that we can't do that right now? Must be election time. Very, very sad. Very, very sad. I'm going to go to some of these comments. I think I missed. Yeah. Gamer says Ro is gaslighting and lying in general. There you go. Lucky Burrito said because Ro Khanna has money in weapons stock. There you go. And we can look up all this information on Open Secrets, by the way. That's why I told you Ro Khanna is not grassroots. You got to look at where he's coming from, the district that he represents, and you'll understand. So I think this is just more telling. I think they're revealing themselves more and more now. I actually wanted to show you this as well because he came back on Twitter and he doubled down, by the way. Max Blumenthal, rightfully so, called him out. Why are there two Ro Khannas on here? Okay. Rightfully so, called him out. So I want to show you this comment from him as well, because this is just ridiculous. Let me share my screen. Let me share this. This just goes to show you that at the end of the day, they don't really want to do anything for the American people. So Ro Khanna goes on to say, while Americans are getting squeezed at the pump, big oil is taking advantage to produce record profits, buy back stock, and send out dividend checks. Our windfall tax on these profits will put money back into the American pockets and incentivize oil companies to push gas prices down. But see, this is the problem, right? Because the problem is people aren't paid a living wage. At the root of it all, that's a big part of the problem. People are not paid a minimum wage. He wants to talk about maximizing profits. That goes back to capitalism. This is what happens in a capitalist society. The people at the top take the most for themselves, and the people at the bottom are exploited. Now, Ro Khanna is not going to tell you that. Because if Ro Khanna says that, then people will start to fearmonger and say, oh, he's talking about socialism. Oh, my God. And he's a capitalist. So at the end of the day, he knows. Speaking of capitalism, let's go into this next story, because I think when you see and hear what just happened with Congress, I don't think you're going to be happy about it. And I think we need to call them out on it. And this is going to take me into the Callin episode. Americans can't afford gas. Congress just gave itself a 21% raise. Let's go into the article. Oh, look, it's Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. Here we go. 1.5 trillion omnibus bill has plenty of inflationary spending, and the honorable members of the legislature didn't leave themselves out. As part of the 1.5 trillion bill, this was released on Wednesday. 5.9 billion fiscal 2022 legislative branch funding portion would substantially boost the office budgets of House members to pay staff more. The legislation would provide $774.4 million for the members' representational allowance, known as MRA, which funds the House office budgets for lawmakers, including staffer salaries. The $134.4 million, or 21% boost over the previous fiscal year, marks the largest increase in the MRA appropriation since it was authorized in 1996. Guys, this is the largest increase since 1996. Let me jump down here. It's not technically a pay hike for Congress members, but in particular, House members are notorious for putting family members on the payroll. Say what? Let me come out. Two things. Where did all this money come from? I thought we didn't have the money, right? Isn't that what Joe Biden said? We don't have the money, right? Isn't that why they had to negotiate down the infrastructure bill? Isn't that why Build Back Better still has not happened, even though it's not really building back better? It needs to be more. Isn't that why? Because they said we don't have the money. We can't do universal health care. Remember, Joe Biden said it's too expensive. It costs too much. Right? Where did all this money come from? Two things. House members can put family members on the payroll. How many of you can do that with your job? With the job you have right now? How many? I couldn't. Let's go back into the article. All right. House members are notorious for putting family members on the payroll and for using staffers to run their errands and handle assorted personal projects for them. What do you know? In August, Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced staffer salaries could exceed those of lawmakers. Members in both the House and the Senate, with the exception of leadership, make an annual salary of $174,000. Staffers can make up to $199,000, roughly. That's convenient since it can act as a pay hike without the negative press. What? MRAs tend to be between 1.2 and 1.4 million. A massive MRA increase has all sorts of political and potentially personal benefits. It is also completely indefensible during an economic crisis. House Dem leaders are cheering the disgusting pork sandwich as a victory for diversity. Here we go. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer and House Democratic Caucus Chair Hakeem Jeffries, why am I not surprised? Boy, they are a piece of work. Released the following statement this morning on an inclusion of a 21% increase in member representational allowance funding in the fiscal year of 2022. Leader Hoyer, Chair Jeffries have long advocated for this increase to the MRA to ensure that members, leaders, and committees can attract and retain the best and brightest to help them serve the American people while promoting a more diverse workforce. I know they are not trying to use diversity as an excuse for this. They say this is done in an effort for diversity, and they also go on to say that this is to help them work for the American people. But they don't do anything for the American people. That's the problem. We elect them, we put them in, and they do the bidding of corporations and donors. That's the big problem here. So why should they get a 21% increase? Think I have a comment here. Thanks so much for the super chat, Callin. They give themselves a raise, but not $2,000 checks. Where's my money, Joe? Where's my money? They make sure that they are taken care of. Imagine if all of us had the same health insurance plan that congressmen have. Imagine if we had the same perks that they have. Imagine for those of you who have kids, if your kids can go to the same schools that their kids go to. Think about that. Going back in. Is there any obscenity that can't be justified in the name of diversity? We join in thanking Chairman DeLaRue and Ranking Member Granger, as well as the members of the Appropriation Committee, for producing a bipartisan omnibus package that includes this increase in office budgets so that congressional staff pay can be a priority and enhance this institution's ability to deliver for the people. They don't deliver for the people. So what are we paying them for? This is going to lead into my call-in segment tonight, because we're going to talk about the class divide. You guys know I've brought up class oftentimes on this show. But I want to know, how does it make you feel that you have all these elected officials in Washington, D.C. that we put in office, that our tax dollars pay for? How does it make you feel to see that they are not helping the American people, to see that they are not working for us, to see that they get in, they take that money, they make sure they stay long enough so they can get more perks, the speaking fees, the engagements, the book deal? How does it make you feel? Especially if you are working class or you are poor and you're still struggling to get by. Knowing that some of you who may watch this probably don't know how you're going to pay for gas to get to work this week. And knowing that the people that you elected, that you put in office to fight for you so that things like this would not happen, so that we can have more financial freedom in the United States, so that things will be better for you financially. How does it make you feel to see this is what's happening for them and nothing is happening for you? And if that is happening for you, I want you to know it is not your fault. Roger Meadows is in Rockfin. Go ahead and put that up really quick, Eric, because then I got to jump in to call in. Thanks so much for the tip, Roger. In the 20th century, we passed more U.S. constitutional amendments than in any other century, 16th or 27th. The 27th was the last time we passed a constitutional amendment when Bush Sr. was president in 1992. In it, said if Congress gives themselves a raise, they can collect until after the next election. Which means too bad for you guys who voted for it but lost. Those who are starting their first term in office, you hit the jackpot. A smart, compassionate, for working class lawmaker and president would issue a government gas debit card to every American in the country, mandate gas stations transition to fast charging energy stations, and 1/2 gas, other electric to be fully electric chargers by 2030, and put heat on car companies to start pumping out EVs and start transitioning to nuclear. 95% energy output creates less waste than S&W. Sounds like they minted a coin for themselves. 100%. Chuck, when I said mint a coin, I didn't mean for y'all. I meant for us. Right? I didn't tell you guys what I was drinking tonight. Tonight I have, it's a New England Pale Ale. It is by Night Shift Brewing and it is called Whirlpool. Whirlpool. It's pretty tasty. Has a little bit of like a citrus kind of hint to it, but not too much. Sometimes people overdo that and I don't like it. Want to give a big shout out to Delthea Simmons, who became a Sabby YouTube member for 8 months now. Inflation is going up because oil companies are greed machines. Congress could set a price ceiling if they really wanted to keep prices low. They won't. 100%. Let me go ahead and jump into Callin. So guys, if you want to call in, if you go to the very top of the live chat feed, there's a pinned comment for me with a link to the room. So if you would do that, you can listen on Callin as well. Eric, are we ready for me to go ahead and hit go live just to test out to make sure we're good to go? Let me know.
Oop. I'll be small. Yeah, we should be.
All right. I'm going to hit go live.
Yeah, definitely. Because then people will be able to see it and call in.
All right. Public. Allow all participants to call in. Yes.
1 sec, coming up.
I'm sorry. Oh, you said 1 sec?
No, I was talking to somebody else. Sorry.
Oh, my bad. All right. So that leads us into the class divide, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. So I just started the room. Just went live. And I'm muted, so.
One thing you can do on the Callin app is do like a pull down to get a refresh. Like I'm doing that on the main page. And then when I do that, the room comes up now. And you do a refresh.
Okay, well.
Yeah, we got people coming in there.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Sabby, can you take the Sabby Sab and bring that as a speaker?
Yep. Okay, so I hit invite to speak.
All right, gotta hit accept, hit unmute. All right, I think in theory they should be able to hear us on Callin. Here, I'll check with my tester here. 1 sec.
Okay. I see thumbs up, so I think that means people can hear us, but Eric's gonna test it just in case.
All right, we got a thumbs up. Good. We're on the bleeding edge here, kids. I think it's working.
Guys, aren't you excited? I don't have to use that big headset this time. I did that last Friday, and that was like that was a doozy. That was
so anybody who's in there is listening can hit the little call symbol, the little phone symbol, and get in the queue for callers. I think we already have Sam in there.
We got Sam in, and then I need to add this to Twitter as well.
Oh yeah, and then I got to add this to the stream here. See what that does. Everything I think still sounds all right. All right, good. But that should make it so we'll hear them on the stream as well. Let's see. bit here.
All right, I'm just telling the people I'm live. I'm coming, guys. Sorry. Thank you for being patient. Those of you on Callin, and those of you kind of just staring at me now. Sabby is live on Callin discussing.
There we go.
The class divide. Tweet that out.
Yep. All right. I see another Eric in the queue. And Donald.
There's a lot of Erics, man.
Oh yeah, I know.
There are.
Well, at least all the Erics in our area here are the good Erics. You got some bad Erics out there too, but we won't talk about them.
Okay.
Just say that.
Now, Eric, can they hear this through StreamYard? I don't hear it on StreamYard.
You mean out to YouTube?
Yeah.
Yeah, they should. Yeah, should be good.
Oh, that's probably because I haven't talked to anybody yet. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's try bringing somebody on.
Okay, give me just 1 second.
All right. We need that first caller from the last time was great. He was like giving us tech support and everything. I was having trouble getting into the room.
That's one thing too. Huh?
Oh yeah.
All right, we got callers lined up. So
and one other thing is, like, if you're going in for the first time, sometimes you have to hit the unmute a couple times and allow privileges on the phone. You might run into that too.
Okay. All right.
I'm talking to the people, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Eric, can you mute yourself for a second? Okay, thanks. All right, guys, welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast on Callin. Tonight we are talking about the class divide. So I just mentioned this live on YouTube that Congress just got a 21% raise. Did you get a 21% raise? And granted, that's spread out multiple ways, but I think it leads us into discussing the class divide, and I want to get your opinion about that. So I'm going to go ahead and take our first caller, which is Sam. Sam, you'll just have to unmute yourself and go right ahead.
Sabby, hello, how are you doing?
Hey, Sam.
Hi there. Yeah, I love you guys, Revolutionary Blackout, and your whole group, including everyone from like JB, Jerome, Jay, Nick, and yourself. You guys are awesome. I'm glad there are people that can speak their mind in a more honest way that doesn't involve kowtowing to like political narratives from neolibs, which we see everywhere. Everyone from the ones that annoy us to even Marianne Williamson. And the few people like Aaron Matte, Glenn Greenwald, Jill Stein, and yourself and your group, I really appreciate how honest and straightforward you've been.
Oh, thank you so much. That's good to hear. Do you have any thoughts about the class divide in the United States?
Yeah. So my background is in neurobiology, but I became really interested in the financial sector over the last couple of years. And what I currently see going on in the United States, and especially under Joe Biden, it's been pretty abysmal. Like under a Republican president during a pandemic, we had enhanced unemployment benefits and student debt relief and mortgage forbearance, and that was all like cut under a Democratic president. So it's pretty depressing. But what I see currently going on with the exploit, so I love this, and it's kind of depressing. But the dollar itself, the imperialist empire of the United States, has this dollar monetary system. Of course, we keep hearing about it. And people talk about it in a weird, kind of non-nuanced way. But it's exploitative in its nature, in that U.S. workers doing the same job in America versus another country will get paid more in the U.S. dollars than a foreigner would. for the same type of labor. And and we can buy products from overseas, so that differential is exploitation in itself, and those dollars eventually get reinvested in the United States, which end up making the oligarchs richer, and that's the whole point of the inflationary system. And that money is used to prop them up, to pad corporate profits and buy off politicians, and that will keep repeating itself, and it keeps getting worse and worse every year. That's why these old people are still in power instead of a newer, younger generation. I personally don't see it getting any better. I just spoke with Jay and Rob and Bob in another call-in prior to this. I gave a pretty radical proposal on what I think the left should do. I'm not going to go into that here because it takes some time. But I don't think it's going to get any better anytime soon. And the current international environment in which Russia is being sanctioned and is being pushed out of the dollar system, which I believe that they planned to do anyways. I think you've talked about it. They're planning to move to to a stronger relationship with China and the digital yuan, and possibly their own digital currency, which India and other Asian countries will go to. And that monetary flow ends up not buying U.S. bonds, and will eventually lead to hyperinflation, which will lead to austerity for the middle class and poor in the United States. It's going to get worse and worse. And I want to say, if Jay and people that are going to vote for a third party instead of more radical solutions, if the best possible scenario were to happen, let's say Jill Stein, someone that we all love, came into power as president of the United States. Impossible, but let's say that's the best case scenario short term for us actually getting anything at all in terms of something passed that's actually progressive. She would preside over a hyperinflationary environment with actual necessity for wartime tactics to prop up the US dollar, and which would require straight up neoliberal neocon like strategy making overseas. She would preside over kind of the death nail to our monetary system and hyperinflation, and it would be blamed on the left. I don't see anything positive happening soon, other than I hope people will organize and actually get in the streets advocating for policy change, because everything else it leads to a really dark path in which we're just going to be demonized.
Well, Sam, they're going to blame the left regardless, right? Like, no matter what happens, they're going to blame us regardless. But I think you brought up a good point about what Americans are paid in this country compared to other countries. I know, like, when I lived in Germany, that was one of the things that for teachers, this is why some American teachers will go overseas and teach, because they make more in countries like Germany, or I've had friends go teach in South Korea. So it's really kind of disappointing that we can't have that same type of lifestyle and type of pay, especially as for teachers, because I think the teachers are very underrated in this country. And that is a field that requires you to have a college degree, but it's not treated like a profession in the United States, and teachers are not paid what they should be paid in this country. So what happens is that causes more people not to go into a teaching profession. So we're not getting the best teachers in this country because of that. And I want people to really understand that there's a reason why the schools in Germany, the schools in some of these other countries have some of the best teachers, because they pay them what they should make. And if you're going to pay people scraps here and you want them to go into this profession where they're not just supposed to teach, they're also supposed to be a babysitter. They're also supposed to be a counselor. So I think you're right. Like, when it comes to the wages in this country, we just don't, it's not there, especially when it comes to positions that are public service positions as well.
But yeah, for public service positions, in that regard, it's definitely true that there's underfunding, and the actual role of those positions is kind of a parody of what should be relative. For example, teachers overseas, like in countries like Germany, they're so wicked smart. They're critical thinkers. They and everything. They're not kowtowing to a certain narrative that they have to stick to, which is absolutely amazing. Did you say that you were working overseas or that you were studying overseas in Germany?
Well, I grew up in Germany.
Oh,
So
so you grew
I
up in.
went to international, like the international schools. So we had
Okay.
teachers from all over, like, but some of the teachers were from the United States, some were from America, excuse me, some were from the United States, some were from Germany, but some were also from like the Philippines and Guam. So you got to meet like everybody, but even those teachers that they brought in, like they bring in the best teachers. They don't bring in teachers that I guess you would say are underperforming.
Mhm.
But some of them would stay there for years. Like even when we came back to the United States, some of my teachers stayed there, even retired, because they were like, why would I come back to the United States? They're not going to pay me what I'm making here as a teacher.
Mhm. Yeah. Were you born in Germany?
I was born in Maryland, but I didn't go to
Oh, perfect.
school. Yeah, I didn't start
That's
school in the
great.
United States. Yeah.
Now I can vote for you for as president one day. That's great.
It wouldn't be
All right,
me.
Sabby.
All righty.
What?
Thanks so much, Sam.
Okay. All right. Take care, Sabby. Bye.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and bring in the next caller, which is Eric. What's going on, Eric? How are you feeling about the class divide in this country?
Oh boy, where do I begin with this? Um, so Sabby, everybody listening, um, when we all like to get a 21% raise for doing absolutely shit. I mean, when we all like to get a raise for doing nothing, just absolutely nothing. If anything, making stuff worse.
Mm-hmm.
And to pick up on the teaching point too, because I'm a teacher myself, and I happen to be teaching in Florida of all places. Ron DeSantis is a jackass. Yeah, that point is so true too, about like all the quality teachers just dipping and just
Mm-hmm.
leaving. Like this year we had a bunch of teachers just either retire early, leave completely, whatever, and you're not paying people. Like this year, effectively, given my school situations, especially bad. Um, I basically had to teach in 3 of my classes, effectively turned into 6. So, because the teacher had issues with his passport or whatever, that's resolved, thank God. But I'm like, what the fuck? How am I supposed? And because mind you, I don't have that much experience myself, and yeah, I just look at teaching as a whole and going, y'all really don't give a damn, and we really don't give a damn in this country.
Nope.
And that's why I guess I like what I see Chris Hedges doing with teaching in the prison,
Mm-hmm.
and some of those guys coming out and becoming teachers themselves. And I was like, why aren't we doing this? Oh yeah, that's right. We don't actually care.
Right.
Yeah, we don't actually care. And I'm sitting there like, dude, y'all, if we had the education we should have had, bro. And I tell some of these students, I'm like, y'all should be demanding stuff out of us, if
Mm-hmm.
anything. I mean, for example, of course, Florida, one of the big states in the center of the whole CRT crap.
Yeah.
And of course, Ron DeSantis like, oh yeah, you can't teach about the evils of communism. And I'm just like, oh boy, here you go, pandering to the base. And it's just like, dude, man, bro, if only some of them, in mostly, I have a school of mostly black people, mostly just us, and it's like, if only y'all really got to learn about Marxism, if
Mm-hmm.
only. And speaking of class divide, like, I give examples to my students, like even in math class, I give examples like, hey, why do we have schools that are funded differently? Um, Look at the neighborhoods. You literally have parents that drive through neighborhoods before they choose a school,
Yep.
just to see what kind of neighborhood the school's in. Oh, this school's in a terrible neighborhood. Let's not go here. You know,
Yep.
or oh, that school's in a really nice upscale neighborhood. Let's go here.
Yep.
And this is, we're effectively teaching our children subliminally and also in just blatant ways that this class divide is not only okay, but it's normal. And I'm like, y'all, that has to stop. Like when you start, and when you see people like uh who's it, Michael Jordan, Oprah, Lil Wayne, or people like that, when push comes to shove, they're gonna go toward their class interests.
Thank you.
And that's why I was glad y'all. That's why I was glad RBN did the video on calling out people like Michael Jordan and Oprah and people like that. It's like, thank God, because you better believe I showed that video to my students.
You showed it to your
And
students?
yes, and yes, my students watched Rome's tour for the poor too. hmm They watched
That is
him especially when he was at the
amazing.
gas station. Yeah, I'm that type of teacher.
Oh, I
Yeah.
gotta watch my language.
It's all. I mean, it's all good. I mean, they they cuss like they cuss like a mile a minute anyway. Every other word is a curse word to them. and, and yeah, it's just been. I guess it's amazing having a channel like RBN to where I can have videos for Black folks to play to other Black folks, and you know, like just get all types of, whether it's just silence when y'all are making a point, or just like oh snap, this dude Rome is really giving people $5. Oh snap.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just we need more of like channels like channels like RBN, or like if anything, teachers just being free. You know, teachers being free to teach everything. Because one example I gave was like, we're effectively handcuffed as teachers. We can't tell you everything
Yep.
because some of
That's
these
so
parents are so
true. That's so
huh?
true. I wish more people realize that. Like every now and then you might luck up and you might end up with a teacher that's a little bit more they're at a school that's a little bit more looser, and they're not as strict, and you don't have to follow the curriculum, to T, but those people are far and few.
Yeah, that's pretty much what my school is. Um, we still have to follow curriculum, yeah, but like we're especially focusing on caring about students. You know, we have like, I guess you could say we have the less behaved students. Like we have a lot of students with records and stuff like that, and um, like actual, like some of our students have actual like charges, and I tell a lot of them, when you get in this class, um, I don't look at that. I'm like, I ask the question, who is the person sitting in front of me now?
Right.
What has that person learned? And let's help build up the person that I'm seeing in front of my face.
That is
But hey,
awesome. That is awesome. I appreciate you, Eric. I'm gonna go ahead to the next caller, but thank you so much for calling in.
no problem. Appreciate you.
Talk to you later.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna take the next caller. This is Donald. Welcome, Donald. Greetings. How are you feeling about this class divide in this country? You'll have to unmute yourself if it's your first time using the app. Not sure if you can hear me. Oh, you hear me. Hi, Donald.
Hello?
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, good. You can hear me. I kept trying to call into different call-ins with Brianna and all these folks, and I couldn't get it. But I'm on with you. So without wasting time, you're one of the best podcasters, along with Katie and Matt and Breaking Points and all that. I just discovered you, but you're just great. The way you handled Nick Rana, that whole thing was just great, and I love you. You know.
Oh, thank you so much. That's really sweet.
Yeah. So get to the point. Yeah, I mean, class divide, right? So you're on the subject of education. So I'll look at my note here. Fred Hampton, okay? And everybody loves to talk about Fred Hampton, but I don't see a lot of people acting that way in terms of two things: education, education, education of people that you need on your side, whether it's Black Lives Matter, any movement like that. And the other part of it is, what would happen, do you think, Sab, if somebody that was a true blue Black Lives Matter supporter, like not a grifter, but a real deal, and they said, "Gee, we need to work with whether it's QAnon or anybody. We need to work with white supremacists. We need to reach across the aisle and sit down with them and work something out." What do you think would happen to that BLM person?
They would disappear pretty quickly.
Right, and that's what Fred Hampton got assassinated for doing just that. So my point is, the people that would cancel are doing the job of the deep state. They're doing the job of the oligarch. That's what they want. And until we get back to the reality of reaching, well, I live in the country now, right? And I've lived in the inner city. I've lived in upper middle class where it's like 2% Black or people of color. And I lived in the inner city where literally I was the only white people were me and my roommate and our lesbian landlord. We were the only white people on the whole block. So, I mean, I've really lived with all kinds of different people. And I can't talk to the people I agree with 90% of the time on the left now. I would call myself left of Bernie, to the right of Richard, not as far left as Richard Wolff, but I'm over on the left way much. And I can't even communicate. But I could talk to people where I live now in the country. It's like Mayberry where I live, and the Trumpers. I can actually have heated discussions with Trumpers, but I can't with people I agree with anymore. It's crazy.
A lot has changed. I mean, I've noticed that before too. Nick talked about this as well, in reference to, this is different Nick, Nick from RBN talked about this as well in reference to when he was canvassing for Bernie Sanders. He was flipping conservative voters. And I think that's something that people don't understand, is that you shouldn't just rule people out because they're not a part of the same political party as you, or they don't have the same political ideology as you. If you don't talk to them, you'll never know how they really feel about the issues. And that's why I tell people, stick to the issues. Talk to people about healthcare. Do they think everyone should have healthcare? How do they feel about having paid family leave? Like, you really have to talk to them about the issues. I think where you're going to find more agreement on, start with those first, and then you can get to the part where you talk about the issues, the areas where you may disagree. But no, it's true. I think that, like, when I think about the class divide, like in this country, I've been on both sides. So like, I grew up middle class, and then I graduated college. 08 housing crisis happened. Couldn't find a job that was going to pay anything. So I was poor for a couple of years. I've talked about this before on my show. And it took me a while to get out of that hole, like financially. But eventually I did get out of that. But I know what it's like to be on both sides. And now I'm in Boston, Massachusetts. I've been here for over 10 years. And I got to tell you, there are serious class issues here in Massachusetts. There is a big wealth inequality in this state. And I live on the side of the state that is the academic elite part of the state. And what I've noticed is that it is easier for me to have these conversations with people that are not a part of that class than it is to talk to people that are a part of that class, even though I came from academia, if that makes sense. Just because
I know exactly what you're saying.
Right. Just because I've been on both sides, and I'm talking to people. I worked at MIT, and like I worked at Boston University, and I noticed like we didn't come from they haven't been on both sides. So they don't understand that when I tell them, like, listen, people need healthcare in this country. Like, not everybody can afford to pay for these prescription medications. their response is typically, well, if they work hard and they study hard and then they'll get into a good school and then they'll get out of that. I'm like, no, poverty is a cycle. It's not easy to get out, especially without any kind of help. I feel like those conversations just go over their head. Uh-oh, Donald, you still there? I think I lost him.
Wait, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, I hear you.
Okay. But yeah, so I've been in and out of the left, and there was some terms that we used to use, friendly fascists and the hipwazi. The friendly fascists are, you know, I don't know. I don't hear those terms as much anymore. I certainly didn't invent them. But it's the hipsters who, and believe me, there was so much misogyny, like Grateful Dead tours and things, and traveling around the country. So much misogyny and sexism, it's not even funny. And among suburban elites, the limousine liberals, friendly fascists, you could call them, which is what we have now in spades, where it's like, here's why. And I'll have one more point about electoral politics. If you just give me a minute, is because they know they're right. In other words, people on the right will say, yeah, I don't care about facts so much, and I don't know, it's a feeling, it's faith. They'll say it like that. They won't say that I have the answers because I'm intellectually superior. But they'll admit more or less that it's a feeling, it's in your gut, it's how I was raised or whatever. It might be hokey, but that's it. On the left, you have no, we've researched it and we know it. But they tribalize so within themselves but since we know we're right, we could call you guys rude, but we're the real smart ones. And it's like, no, people, you have your head further down in the sand than anybody on the right that you're talking about. And here's just something that, I've been called to John Brown by activists like strong, college educated folks. You don't know me from Adam, but so to make this criticism, I'm going to say it. It's like, so in the suburbs, you got the QAnon adjacent, you got the people that are telling you that, Biden's evil and, homeschooled, the earth is 5,000 years old. Yeah, a lot of ignorance over there being taught. But in the inner cities, and I fought this every time there was this guy named Walt Dixie. He did some good stuff, and he was with Al Sharpton, the People's Network and all that. And every time his, name would show up and be like, oh, what's his grift now? They opened a co-op on the south side. Of course, it had like 10 cans on it, and they had all these videos of going to New York and talking to people that had successful co-ops. And it's like the grift is real. And I'm sorry, but like the people that are the precinct captains, this is what I say to people about third party. What are you going to do with the Democratic Party? The Republicans go to the precinct level. If you're not doing it there, the grift is real. And I'm not even going to hate people. It's their life. What they do is they just tell people who to vote for. And the people, as you know, and I'll leave with this, whether it's who's that guy that is now not Jefferson, or what's his name, that's the leader, Cedric Richmond. He was in one of the impoverished city areas in Louisiana. You have Clayar, you have the person outside of Chicago who's pro-corporate, like openly, pro-life, anti-union. You have people that are, and so when I hear people on the left say, oh yeah, those dang, Trumpsters, they're such rubes. People are not down there like Brett Hamden or whoever else. And I try to do it in my little life as I go through my life, and try to explain stuff to people, but they're not getting the message. They're going to vote for Biden. They're going to vote for the people that the local business owners and the people that run these towns are going to tell them who to vote for. And it isn't going to be Bernie, and it isn't going to be a third party, person of color that's part of the left. It's going to be the corporate Dems, and that's who runs the CBC. You know that too,
Yeah.
And part of that's a genuine conservatism socially among among the faith community, and they're important. Believe me, I'm not putting it down entirely. That's who really the beauty of the neighborhoods and who does the good stuff in the neighborhood. But you know what I'm saying? I'll leave it at that. You get my point, I think. But it's just not going to change until people realize that the people on the right and the left, that the people aren't necessarily looking out for you just because they're showing up in the neighborhood and putting out clothing drives and things. That's just they're doing real stuff. But over with the other hand, man, they're just taking a lot of money from the corporate Dems, and they're not looking back.
Wow, well said, Don. Thanks so much for calling in.
All right, thank you. I'll talk to you again.
All righty. All right, so I think I am. Whoopsie. What'd you say, Don? Oh, sorry.
No, I'm just saying food for thought. I mean, I don't know if people. It would be controversial if I had a platform where we're saying the things I'm saying to you. I would have to have thought about it and written it word for word and do a couple drafts and edit it to make sure it wasn't because I mean I just laid it out there extemporaneously. But I don't know. I think there's some points there. I don't know if you agree or disagree with any of it, but I'd be interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, no, you have some good points. You have some good points. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I'll listen into the rest of the callers.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so I want to go to the next caller, which is Kusha. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So let me go to take next caller. Okay, so Kusha, you are now on the mic.
Good evening, Sabby. Thank you so much for putting me on the mic. And yes, you did pronounce my name very well. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate the opportunity to be in dialogue with you. Like the previous caller, Donald, I very much enjoy the way you conduct yourself around other people. You're very polite, very kind. You're very amiable. So keep up the great work and how you interview.
Oh, thank you so much. How are you feeling about the class divide in the country?
Absolutely. Well, if there's something I'd like to say about the class divide, I think there's two large points I'd really like to raise and hear your analysis of. I think the previous caller, Donald, talked about it when he mentioned like white supremacists. I think when you look at the class divide, you have many people who are poor, working class, but they still have an ideology that can be exploited. You think of fascists, Nazis, Ku Klux Klan, Aryan Brotherhood, and that's just like if you think about like in the U.S. and in Germany and so on. But you have like ISIS in Iraq and Syria, Taliban in Afghanistan, Al Qaeda in the Middle East, Boko Haram in Nigeria, Al Shabaab, Al Nusra. And so I think this is also an important thing to consider. Like Mussolini had like the black shirts. Pinochet had all sorts of right-wing extremists to support him in the coup d'etat that Richard Milhous Nixon and Henry Alfred Kissinger organized in 1973. Or in the 1953 coup d'etat, Shaban Jafari organized same types of people. Marx had a term for this called lumpen proletariat. And I think it's very important to have this in the analysis when you think about the class divide. Not necessarily that someone who is of this working class or poor background, and they do end up being a right-wing enabler, right-wing enforcer, right-wing supporter. It's not that they cannot change, but I think perhaps you'll agree that you have to have a specific agenda to deprogram them out of this bigotry and pull them out of this deep rabbit hole of hatred and vitriol and damage to society with what that worldview can do when enacted forcefully. And so there's that on one end. I think about this term lumpen proletariat. I also think what's interesting about it is how like the Black Panthers approached lumpen proletariat. If I'm not mistaken, they were not necessarily too with incorporating lumpen proletariat, and this is a term I believe Marx and Engels coined. But if I'm not mistaken, it was the Black Panthers who wanted to mobilize the lumpen proletariat as they were. I think in the sense, and I think Mao Zedong in some ways also used many peasants who had like reactionary ideas, but saying like, okay, we can mobilize them still, we can organize with them as they are. So that's one thing that I would really like to raise and hear your thoughts on. And secondly, what I'd like to hear your thoughts on is the class divide you mentioned to me in the U.S. I'm curious to know your thoughts about the class divide internationally. Because what I've noticed with many people in the U.S. media who are left-wing and they have decent platforms, like 100,000, 200,000 plus followers, that there is a hesitancy to extend solidarity and doing it in action, forming the networks that you are doing very well and many people in the U.S. are doing very well. Like we see Christian Smalls for Amazon or Jas Brizak for the Starbucks workers. There are many. But the benefits of having a solidarity internationally, not just with those who are living under allies of the United States government that are very oppressive domestically, like Egypt or Saudi Arabia or Turkey or Colombia, but also with enemy governments of the United States, people who live under them and are left-wing progressives, labor organizers, who are begging for people who have the freedom to make these critiques to do so and also extend the solidarity, give them platforms and so on. Like under the Islamic Republic of Iran, there are many people like Parvin Mohammadi, Sepideh Ghoulian, Sohail Arabi, Ismail Bakhshi. Ismail Bakhshi is like Christian Smalls in Iran. He organized the Seven Hill Sugar Factory, like around 6,000 workers, something like that. Same thing like Christian Smalls, but he was tortured, imprisoned, detained, family threatened. But what I'm really curious about is, do you believe that the class divide is something in which those in the United States should pursue having relationships, making networks, forming solidarity, doing action, giving the rhetorical support to condemning the enemy governments of the United States, while at the same time that doesn't preclude condemning the militarism and jingoism of the United States as a war machine? Because obviously what happens is, in these tensions between the U.S. government and when it comes to invading Saddam Hussein's Iraq or invading Afghanistan, invading the Taliban, which of course is the Frankenstein's monster of the U.S. just as much as the Islamic Republic of Iran is, because the Carter administration supported their rise. But that ultimately what happens is you have so many poor and working class people, and especially precious children, who are always just the ones being ravaged and destroyed and decimated with this. And I think that I'm not saying that the U.S. government, Biden, Trump, and so on, Obama, Clinton, when they make these criticisms, it's obviously deeply hypocritical. It's obviously a grandstanding. We know the U.S. after World War II has been involved in coup d'etats aplenty, whether that was in Chile, Argentina, Iran, or invasions like Iraq, trying to just overwhelm Cuba with the Bay of Pigs and so on, or even if you look at Operation Northwoods in 1962 with Kennedy, which Kennedy rejected, to carry out terrorism, the U.S. CIA trying to carry out terrorism to launch an invasion into Cuba. So that's all there. And I think the full story just needs to be told when talking about foreign policy and U.S. history, and especially as it pertains to your original question about the class divide internationally. Because many friends of my dad, they suffered. My dad was supposed to be executed by the Islamic Republic of Iran as a labor organizer. He was a part of a worker council in the 1980s, early 80s. The worker council movement was crushed by the Islamic Republic of Iran, just like the Kurds were crushed. These were strong elements of resistance, and the Islamic Republic needed an external enemy, just like we see that the U.S. always needs an external enemy when there are episodes of people suffering so deeply in the country and poverty being so immense, as we see now with the focus being directed to Ukraine. Of course, Putin's invasion was murderous and atrocious, but there was much by the U.S. and NATO that led to this point, and Putin escalated from there. Or during the Bush administration, using the scapegoat of Iraq and Afghanistan instead of addressing, worsening healthcare conditions. You mentioned healthcare, and we know that Medicare for All will save not just money, but tens of thousands of lives. If you saw Professor Alison Galvani's study in The Lancet, I believe about a year or two ago it was, that it would save $450 billion a year over 10 years, I believe, each year over 10 years, and some 68,000 lives, over 68,000 lives, because we have 37 million people who are uninsured and 41 million people who are underinsured. So I'd really love to hear your thoughts on, and I can reiterate them, on the 2 points that I stated. One, on this notion of lumpen proletariat and what that means for the class divide. And secondly, for international worker solidarity, both with people who live under allies of the U.S. government and those who live under enemies of the U.S. government. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when you look at the model that Fred Hampton had, what the Black Panthers did, I think that it's important to remember, because this is one point I think sometimes people do forget about. I think it's important to remember that when Fred Hampton did approach the young patriots, he did tell them that in order for them to work together, they would have to denounce racism first. And so there were some of them that were willing to do that, and there were some that weren't. So not everybody moved over to be in solidarity with the Black Panthers. So that is one thing I do just want to point out. And I think that we have different opinions about this over at RBN. There are some of us that are willing to still work with people that have that may be racist, that may have that mindset, right? And try to change them. And then there are some of us that kind of feel like we've tried that before. We've been down that road, and we prefer not to work with people that are racist. So I think it just depends. But I think the problem that I think you're going to run into when you are working with people that still have like that deep rooted racism, they are going to have to, again, go through some type of deprogramming, because what happens when you're fighting for class solidarity and then all of a sudden, let's say it's a job issue, and the issue is you have a supervisor that's deciding who to pay what to, right? And so let's say the supervisor gives the white employees a higher pay raise or a higher salary. They're offered more money to stay with the company, and the black employee is not. Well, then I think that's where you might run into issues with the race issue. And so I think this is why it's important that, for me, they would have to denounce the racist beliefs would have to go. And this is coming from someone where I lived in the South, I've lived overseas, and I have tried to do those types of things before. And what I found along the way is that in order for people to respect you fully as a person, for me, they'll have to denounce the racism has to go. And that's not something, I realize that's not something that I can do for them. Like, they have to want to change that. I can educate them as much as possible, but if people don't show you any type of respect and don't want to hear what you have to say because of your skin color, it's going to be hard to get across to them in the first place. So I think for me, they would have to denounce that. I think when it comes to the different platforms, yes, I think we need to, and Jordan Sherrington was mentioned this recently, there should be one large network, not on YouTube. It could be on Roku or some platform off of YouTube. And all of the left independent media networks should be on that platform, whether we get along with each other or not. Just have all of us on that platform. People can hear different points of view and opinions. We don't have to be buddies. But I think what I have noticed is when it comes to the international perspective, when it comes to the war perspective, there are some areas for me that I will hit a wall on. And for me, I'm anti-war, I'm anti-imperialist. And right now, you have some people on the left that are not anti-imperialists and they're not anti-war, or they kind of like talk around it in a way to make it seem like what they're saying is not so bad, even though it is. So that's not something for me that I can negotiate on. That's not an area I'm willing to budge on. When it comes to those international movements, I think it's important to have people in the community, in the podcast community, that are international. So at RBN, we have Josana, Dr. Karim Batesh, and Peter Beatty. You know, they're abroad, but Josana's from Brazil, and she's here, you know, in America now. I think it's very important that we do build solidarity with people who are abroad, not just in the United States. And so that is something that RBN is working on. I know we're working on an International Leftist Summit as well. And that's why you'll see us bring on people who are abroad, people who have different opinions. But I think in reference to solidarity in general, the biggest problem I think that we run to in reference to the shows is there's a lot of ego and there's a lot of money. And those of us who don't have the ego and those of us who don't have the money, we seem to be the ones that are really willing to work together, to go across channels and work with other people. And then there's some exceptions also too to that. Like Jimmy has no problem going on smaller channels. Not everybody is that way. In fact, most people are not that. I'm just being honest. Most people are not that way. So if people really want a movement and they really want to bring about change in this country and they really want to help people, people have to put their egos aside and they have to stop thinking with their wallet and start thinking with their heart. And until that happens, I don't really see the left really moving anywhere. And I feel like this is why we never win anything, because there's too many egos involved. And there's some people that's got too much money involved and they care more about that than they do about actually helping people. Because if you really want to help people, you don't have to do that through electoral politics. You can help people through mutual aid. You can help people through direct action. You can help people by going out in the streets and protesting with your friends. You can help people doing that. And you don't see those people doing that. So I think for me, that is the big thing. The first question you need to ask yourself, who is actually in this that really actually wants to help people and create change? And who is doing this because they're just making money. And it may not have started that way. Some people probably started off with good intentions. But I think we can all look around and see where they are now. Things have definitely changed. And Bernie Sanders is not running for president. So for me, like, I think you need to work with people. Like I said, all of us do need to come together, I think. But I don't think that will happen because there's too much ego. And then some people, they're not going to want to leave the money that they're getting. So they're not going to be willing to work with people that have smaller like channels than them. And that's really unfortunate because there's a lot of things that we could teach them that they have no clue about because they're a part of a totally different class. They don't know what it's like to struggle. They've never been working class. They've never had like a job where they might have been making like minimum wage. If you have never experienced that, just because you read a book about this theory on it, that doesn't mean you really know what it's like.
I think
That's
you have
my,
some very beautiful. Oh, please go on.
I was gonna say that's my rant on that.
Oh, it was definitely not a rant. It was very welcome. I think you made a very beautiful point about how many such people may be thinking with their wallets instead of their hearts. For me, I'm personally someone who loves the opportunity to speak with different people, whatever their political worldview is, because I love being able to share any information I picked up and experiences. And I think you have a very strong point here when you say, like, if you've not experienced, you were saying like minimum wage, but I think it definitely connects to just the exploitation that comes within like a big business or just the employer-employee relationship, seeing it very clearly. Like, for instance, a teacher, oftentimes you talked about, like, it was being mentioned, and I really enjoyed that, about how, like, in Germany, the teachers make much more. The teachers here get paid such paltry wages and they can't live that well. But oftentimes, maybe the employer-employee relationship's not that evident. For me, I work for a very large accounting firm, and we have to work 50 to 65 hours a week during this time of the year until April 15th for the tax season. And it's so evident, like multiple times a week, we have calls about, you know, how many hours are you going to work right now? How many hours on this client? Being micromanaged constantly, the reaching, being messaged, are you doing this right now? Are you doing that? And so you see it so evidently. I see like how much the firm charges the clients for how much for every hour of work I do versus how much I get paid per hour. When I calculate, I get paid a salary though. There's no overtime, whatnot. We don't have any union, whatnot. So I see it very clearly. And you're right. Like when you're working minimum wage, it's very obvious to you. The exploitation is very obvious to you. Sometimes people need something directly in their sights to be able to get that analysis. So I think that's a very rich point you make. One thing that I really like to ask you about, when you said like, I'm anti-war, I'm anti-imperialist. For me, when I hear the word anti-imperialist, when it's used, it raises a lot of questions for me. And I'm very curious to know, what does it mean to you to be anti-imperialist?
Well, it definitely, when you look at the United States government, for example, the United States government has been known for decades, centuries, to steal resources from other countries. They've done this to Haiti. They've done it to Africa. They've done it to Afghanistan. That's why we were in Afghanistan. A lot of people don't want to talk about that. But there were resources there. We see right now, even with the conflict with Russia and Ukraine, there's a pipeline involved. So I don't agree with, and I say the United States government because we're usually the ones that do it. I don't agree with the United States government intervening in other countries, getting involved in their conflicts, taking their resources. I don't believe in regime changes. The United States government doing that as well. I think when it comes to other countries' affairs, I do not like for us to get involved. And the reason is because every time we do that, the people in those countries, they're worse off than before we intervened. Perfect example of that, Saddam Hussein. And my dad talked about this. So my dad was, my dad's like retired military. So I grew up with this stuff. So I got to see like both sides of it. And Saddam Hussein, perfect example. Was Saddam Hussein awful? Absolutely. But the United States government got involved, took out Saddam Hussein, and that gave rise to ISIS. So the people in that country, they were now worse after U.S. intervention. I think the United States government has absolutely destroyed Haiti. but they don't want Haitian people to come here for a better life. And now look at what they've done to Afghanistan. They put sanctions on them and people are starving there. And now they put sanctions on Russia and they're bombing people in Somalia. What have they done to people in Yemen? Like, it gives this idea that the United States government is supposed to be the world's police. And I don't like that.
I agree with the points you raised, the substance of it. I agree with all of them. No one can deny that. What the U.S. did to Haiti, what the U.S. did to Afghanistan, what it did to invading Saddam, even though he was their ally during the Iran-Iraq War, even though they were supporting both sides, of course. And so my mom lived through the Iran-Iraq War. Her neighborhood in Tehran was being bombed by Saddam's fighter jets. Her brother deserted during the Iran-Iraq War. I don't even know why he was there. He was so gentle and docile. He got married early, and his wife told him, go in the military so we can go to Europe afterwards. You get some money, some prestige. But, he was in the back during the fighting, just supplying weapons. And, there were instances where Saddam's soldiers would cut the Islamic Republic soldiers' heads off and throw them to the other side. And he deserted, and then he got tortured by the Islamic Republic's intelligence agency when he fled and deserted, and they got him. They started slapping him in the face multiple times. So trust me, I understand that Saddam Hussein and the enemy governments of the United States, my parents, my dad was supposed to be executed, my mom was supposed to be whipped tens of times. So I've seen that very clearly. I think for me, when someone says anti-imperialist, for many of the self-described anti-imperialists in the U.S. media, I've seen like a hesitancy to criticize the enemy governments of the United States. Because for me, it's very easy to say like what the U.S. has done to Iraq, what the U.S. has done to Libya, what the U.S. did to Grenada, what the U.S. did to Panama, what the U.S. did to Guatemala, what it did to Chile. Like all these are at the forefront. I think, though, what I see sometimes, like for instance from Aaron Mate, is he says to me it's not his place to criticize the enemy governments of the U.S. because he's a citizen of the West and he pays taxes to the U.S. That tax argument doesn't make sense to me because the U.S. pours billions of dollars into the United Nations. The United Nations is supposed to be a global effort. Obviously, like the U.S. is probably the largest purveyor of violence since World War II around the world. I'm not one to deny that at all. But I think it makes it seem like just because you pay taxes to the U.S. that the other countries, it's those people internally that should speak on it, but you shouldn't speak on it. Not necessarily and stopping your government from invading. I think that's half the equation. Half the equation is us and everyone around the world stopping the U.S. government from escalating wars, from invading, from occupying, from making Cuba suffer so much from the sanctions. Like the economic sanctions, of course, they devastate Cuba for the past, 60 plus years, hundreds of billions of dollars. They devastate the people of Iran. They devastate the people of Syria. I'm not denying that at all. I think, though, like when it comes to the U.S., and you mentioned Afghanistan, I don't think necessarily the U.S. first got involved in Afghanistan way back when, in like 79 during Carter's time, just for the resources. I think definitely there's the case now when the U.S. was involved for the past 20 years when they tried with like the kleptocrats of Hamid Karzai and Ashraf Ghani. Definitely the resources of like minerals for sure. I remember there's a CNN article about like a $1 trillion worth of minerals in Afghanistan. And I remember even seeing Pete Buttigieg had a map of the minerals in his living space. And of course, the opium in Afghanistan, like that's true, I think. But I think foremost, what drew the U.S. in was when the Soviet Union tried to have an influence. If you're familiar with the situation in Afghanistan, there was something called the Sour Revolution in the late 1970s, when you had like a coup d'etat that was...
Kusha, I do want to make sure I get to the other callers.
Sure.
Because they have been waiting a bit, but definitely check back in. I mean, I call in connected to my show every Friday night, but I do want to get to the other callers too, because I know they're waiting.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for just letting me know. That's not an issue at all. They definitely deserve to be able to contribute and enjoy your dialogue just like I did. So thank you very much. You have a great rest of your night, Sabby.
You too. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to go to the next caller, which is Lex. Lex, are you there?
I am here. Sabby Sabs, this is Lexi Lex. Oh, just a second. My husband tells me what can you hear me?
I think your volume's really low.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Can you guys hear her on Callin? Because Eric, how does she sound on Callin?
We're going to do it this way. Can you hear me now?
All right.
Can you hear me?
You're good, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, Sabby Sabs, this is Lexi Lex. And first of all, I think this is just fantastic what you're doing here. And I'm not going to take up a lot of time because there's a lot of people here with a lot of questions. But first of all, when you talk about all of these divides and whatnot. And first of all, these also, and I'm a white woman, but I came to this country in 1997 with really enormous credentials and was not really able, political credentials, but was not able to infiltrate the political system here. So this tells me also that there's a lot of stuff going on here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, but also I would really like to address what Eric, who was 2 callers before me, said, that, you know, what's important is that person in front of me, to build up the person in front of my face. And I think that's really important. But the American system seems to be, we deal with a lot of arrogance and a lot of ego, because I know even when I came to this country, with my really very significant credentials, and was not able to, you know, infiltrate anything in, you know, I mean, I'd have loved to have been a political secretary or just an advisor or whatnot. And so my point to you is that I can only imagine for people who don't have, you know, the education or the background or whatnot. This is in many ways a very cruel country. And, you know, I came here for love, and, you know, I can always go back to Canada, and, you know, but these are just things that are, so when I hear all of these experiences that people are having, and I'm having these experiences in my context, so how much worse can this be for people that you know don't come at it from this context? I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound arrogant, I don't mean to sound privileged, but it's just it's not a particularly friendly country.
No, it is not. You're right about that.
You
It's
know,
true.
and we come and we hope to have, and I didn't even come like from a like a refugee status or anything like that. But you know, this is not, and I don't understand why things are the way they are, except that I think there are a lot of old white men that we have to get out of, and old white women, unfortunately, that we just need to get out of the picture.
Mm. I think those are all like good points, and thank you for sharing your experience. Coming from my friend Meg, she's also from Canada, and so she talks about like her
Uh-huh.
experiences here too as well. I think that, you know, again, I think a lot of this goes back to the money. I think, listen, one of the things I've learned living in this country is that people treat you a certain way when you have money, and people treat you a certain way when you don't. And I think that is a big part of the problem. And if you look at a lot of the people that we have as in office here in the United States that are in DC, a lot of them are much older, but they're also very wealthy. Nancy Pelosi is very wealthy. Like Chuck Schumer is wealthy. So they have been this way for quite some time. And I think that money can have the ability to corrupt people, especially going into a political position and going into a party that is controlled by Wall Street. So I think that's a big part of it as well. And the reality is, when you don't have money in this country, people do treat you a certain way. And there's other factors that go along with this. There's racial issues, there's immigration issues. Some of my friends who have come here from the Caribbean or have come here from like Jamaica, like those, like Central America, stuff like that, they have prejudice towards them that I don't have, just because they are an immigrant, if that makes sense. So they go through some of the things that I don't have to go through. And I think that we tend to have this idea, we've been conditioned to believe what is supposed to be American. And unfortunately, now some of this has changed a little bit over the years, but unfortunately, we have been taught, at least since I was a kid, that America looks like a certain type of person. And if you don't look like that certain type of person and you don't have that American dream that some people do come here for, you are seen as less than. But I think a lot of this goes back to capitalism, to be honest.
One of the things, too, that I see a lot of is dealing with young people in my own community and among the people that I know, is nobody wants to get involved because, first of all, you have to have a gazillion dollars even to get involved in politics. So how do you even unseat? I mean, there are the people like even, Pelosi, McConnell, and, I don't care whether you think they've done a good job or not. That doesn't matter. They need to move on. And there needs to be something new, but that's not happening. You know what, Sabby, I want, because you and I talk in other forums, so I want you to get on to other calls and other callers. Thank you for taking my call.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
All right. So I am going to the next caller, and the next caller is Delthea. So let me go ahead and bring her in. Let me see.
Is that okay?
I'm trying to make Delthea the next caller. So give me just a second, you guys. Like I said, this app is kind of I think I'm going to have to do this again where I go out and come back in. Hold on. I don't know why it won't let me. They really have to fix this with the app because, like, sometimes it won't let you bring in a new person. Hold on, Delthea, I'm coming. Eric, you think I should refresh?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but I can't even refresh the app. Like, let me see.
It's okay if you go all the way out and back in.
Yeah, but if I close it, what happens? The room is still.
As long as you don't end the room.
Okay, we'll see what happens here.
Going out.
Go back in.
Anybody got any good chats for us?
Okay.
We got Gamer in there.
They really gotta. Okay, here we go. Okay, Delthea, you are next up. Oh no, it just kicked Delthea. Hold on, let me bring her back in. I'm gonna bring you in as a speaker, Delthea, so you can just jump right in. So I put you as invite to speak.
We're gonna make
And
it
you just
work.
have to accept it. I don't know if Delthea can hear me or not.
Hopefully.
Did it work? Oh, it did work. Okay, so Delthea, you just need to unmute yourself. Yeah, if you go down to the bottom and click the unmute part, you should be able to speak.
Sometimes you have to hit the little microphone a couple times.
Yeah, I know. Let me see if it'll let me. No. So I don't know what happened. Well, Delthea, I'm going to take the next caller, but I'll see your mic when it unmutes. Okay, it's unmuted.
Hey.
There we go.
Hello.
Hey.
How are you?
That
Can you
didn't
hear me
take long. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay.
First of all, I wanted to tell you, you make me so happy, and I am so proud of you, and I am so glad you're on.
Oh,
That's
thank
the
you so
first thing.
much.
The second thing I want to tell you, how do I feel about the class divide? I'm against it. How do I feel about Congress making the money they do? I don't fault anybody making the money they do, provided they earn it. They don't earn it, therefore I'm against that too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now about talking to the lumpen proletariat, I have a friend. He's a pastor in Huntsville, Alabama. And he has this thing, he talks about the 3 B's: belonging, behavior, and belief. When you want to talk to somebody who's not necessarily on your page, first you establish belonging. You find something that you agree with them on. Second, you start working on their behavior. You don't have to like me, you don't have to like that person over there, but you do have to work with them. That's the behavior. You get the belonging and behavior down, the belief will follow. That's how you reach across the aisle. Okay, how am I doing on time? Okay. And now the last thing I wanted to say, and I'll get off so somebody else can speak, is don't be so hard on yourself. I honestly believe that there are gremlins in all the computers, so when stuff doesn't work, it's not your fault. And now I say good night.
Thanks, Delthea.
Have a
Thanks
good
so
day, dear.
much. You too. All right. I'm going to take the next speaker, which looks like it's Lucky Burrito. Hi, Lucky.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
How are you tonight?
I'm good. I got some Whirlpool. I'm all set.
Nice. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. I am so excited that you did this with the Callin. We're going to start doing this too. This is awesome.
It's fun, huh? It's kind of like Twitter Spaces, except you don't have to hold down that mic the whole time. Let's see.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, I
can.
like it. I mean, like, we got our show started basically because of like Slow News Day doing their Friday night call-in show. So like you're totally throwing it back to like, you know, when all of us used to call in there every Friday night. Yeah, like I was like, oh my gosh, I have to call in.
It's fun. It's fun. So tell me, Lucky, how do you feel about the class divide in this country?
I feel like we need to be done with the class divide, and we need intentional communities and mutual aid, and we need to have our own parallel society until the rest of everybody else can figure out that we're not getting out of it by voting. You know, we need to start building our society. We need to have our seeds and our skills and the things that they can't take away from us. They can't take away your knowledge. They can't take that away. You know, we need to be prepared because it's going to get ugly. Unfortunately, that's what I feel like is going to happen, and we have to abolish the class. Like, we have to abolish that. We need to get rid of that class divide. That's what needs to happen.
What do you think like it would
'Cause
take for that to happen? I'm curious because like I think the problem that I've run into a lot of times is there's some people who are wealthy that are really willing to help and to fight, and they understand a lot of times they may have come from working class like growing up, right? And then they became like wealthy like later on. But from my interactions working with people at places like MIT and Boston University, they tend to want to protect their capital. They want to protect like their wealth, and they don't. That is the impression that I've received, that they don't really want to make any sacrifices to help other people because they feel that if they were able to make it to that level, then other people should be able to do it too.
Yeah, and that's why we need to decide that we're not going to work within that construct anymore. And we need to say, no, we're done with that. We are going to build an intentional. I mean, this is what they do in other countries, right? Like they're like, nope, we're taking this land because we're humans and we live on this planet. We're going to take this land and we're going to do what we need to do here. And that's it. We need to like say no more of this and stand up for it and actually like be out there in our communities and be with the people and talk to our neighbors. And I know I challenge everybody to go out there and talk to your neighbors and talk to somebody that you don't know. Put yourself out of your own comfort zone and talk to them as if you already know them. Think about everybody as if they're already your friend. And if you look at people like, oh, well, they're already my friend, then, you know, I would be willing to hear their side of this because they're already my friend. You know,
Have the intention.
We have to have the intention. We need to get over ourselves. We need to get over our anxiety and our whatever preconceived notions. Like, oh, what's the worst thing that's going to happen if you say hi to people and start talking to them like they're your friend? What, they're going to look at you like you got two heads? Oh, well, I know in New England that's completely normal. Like, people look at me like that all the time, and I'm like, whatever, you know, like. We need to shed our egos because our egos are what's holding us back from having these connections and these bonds. Like, what are we afraid of?
That pretension is usually
What are we so afraid of?
you laugh about having a laughing moment with somebody.
Mhm. Yeah.
Serious about it.
You know, like,
Oh, that's a
yeah,
good
you
point.
can. Like, I talk to everybody as, I mean, you know, you've been on the show, you know, like how I do things. And, you know, I have my little dog and he's a service dog. So he's with me everywhere too. And because I have him, he is one of the biggest like icebreakers. You know what I mean? Who doesn't want to see a cute little dog and, you know, that's like super excited to greet you and wants to, you know, like that right there. He's my icebreaker. And we just need to figure it out. And who cares if we're awkward? Who cares if we say something stupid? Like, what are you going to lose out of it?
It can't be
That's
any
a good
worse than it
point.
is now.
Like, what do we have to lose at this point? Like, we already are, you know, we're going in the wrong direction and what we're doing isn't working. And we need to all examine that and all look at the larger picture of it. You know, like, are you going to care how somebody politically identifies if you need a jump start with your car? You know what I
Ooh.
mean? No, that person's there to help you. You want that person to help you. Are you going to screen your doctor and say, do you identify the same way as I do politically? Or, are you part of this organization? Like, can you imagine, like, if you actually had to compare lists with somebody, you know what I mean? Like, I always say, like, on my show, like, like, Steve is my partner and my best friend, and I intentionally spend my life with him. Okay. I don't agree with him 100% on everything. I don't expect myself to agree with anybody on 100% of everything. And we just need to get over it. Like,
Mm.
we don't have
That's a
time.
good that's a good point. I mean, it's no, that's well said. I hear you on that. Anything else before I move on to the next caller?
No, that's it. But I can't wait to have you back on. And you are such a treasure and a gem in this. And
Keep on rocking it, Sabby.
yeah, you keep doing what you're doing, Savvy. You're doing amazing.
Oh, thank you guys. Thanks so much.
All right, we'll talk soon.
See ya.
Bye.
All right, I'm going to take the next caller, and that caller is Greg Spruce. I don't know why I said it like that. I'm getting kind of silly now, and I just started my second beer. Sorry. Hi, Greg.
Nice. Hey, Sabby, how's it going?
Good.
Cool. So, class divide. I'm going to reflect on my experience with the Massachusetts class divide. Having, my all 38 years of my life lived in Massachusetts. So, I feel like you can almost say there's like three big classes or groups. You have the professional class, which is everyone with pretty much like an engineer's salary on up to doctors and so forth. They are Democratic voters, and I would say that, like, as much as people think of Mass as like progressive, I'd say like Elizabeth Warren is the embodiment of like of that group, the white, mostly white professional class in Massachusetts. Like they're like these ideas of liberal or like quote progressivism, but they really they want to stay comfortable and focus on things like making sure that leaf blowers are banned in their towns. That's that group in Massachusetts. So you have them. You have the white working class, who as a manufacturing engineer, I've probably interacted with hundreds of people of the kind of trades type job. It's a trade type job if you're a machinist or you're working in a forging company. It's not college educated work, but it's like skilled labor at the level of like a electrician or whatever. But so I can tell you that group is very conservative, mostly Trumpers. There is some bigotry. There is a lot of like Blue Lives Matter flags. I see them everywhere in Massachusetts. So there's that group, and then you have the minorities in Massachusetts, and then of course the poor minorities in Massachusetts. Like they are the ones that are getting screwed the most. Their neighborhoods are being gentrified. Their small businesses in the Boston area have been destroyed. So that affects a lot of working class people with how the pandemic was handled in a way that did not consider the small businesses throughout the Boston area. So, like, I mean that's I put three groups, but you could divide it however you want. But the class divide is right there. It's like the professional class overall has been okay in Massachusetts, but the poor class is just getting screwed more and more. And so there's a bigger divide economically, and there's a bigger divide in terms of whether it's more on the conservative side or the left side or whatever in among the poor class, there's more urgency, or there's more. I don't know what the right term, but they're hurting, and I that's my summary of what I see is the class divide in Massachusetts, and they don't get along. Like, for example, like I have a cousin who has a very thick Boston accent, and that's associated with, like, the working class in Massachusetts, and it kind of makes people look down on you. So one time he was at a party with me, and some of my other friends who were, I guess I would say, more of the professional class. Like, as soon as he started speaking, they rolled their eyes because it's like, oh no, who brought the peasant? It's bad. There's a lot of classism here, and I don't have a solution in mind. That's my summary of what I see in Massachusetts.
Yeah. No, I can attest to that too. And I think Eric can agree with that as well. Like, that is a big problem here. Like, you're right, they don't get along. Like, at all.
Yeah.
Like, it's very much, we have a large wealth gap here in Massachusetts. And what you see in Eastern Massachusetts versus what you see in the western part of the state, it's very different. So, like I told you guys, there's a lot of academic elite here in the Boston area because of MIT, because of Harvard, because of BU, because of Boston College. There's so many colleges here, and then a lot of hospitals as well. And then we're number two when it comes to startups, right after Silicon Valley. So tech also came here. So those are the people that this city attracts now, whereas it used to be, Boston used to be a working class city. That is no longer the case. So you do have like neighborhoods of people that are working class, and then there may be this kind of I don't want to say anger, but I guess some type of resentment towards the professional class that came into those neighborhoods, gentrified those neighborhoods, and have kind of taken over their communities, and the working class people have been pushed further away. So there's a lot of there's a lot of tension.
Yeah.
All right, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. What's up?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure. I mean, because I feel like it's easier to. We talk about flipping, Trump voters to Bernie voters, like Nick was doing. Like, it's easier to do that when it's because there's a divide ideologically, but there's no class divide there when it's two working class people talking to each other. So it's easier to reach across the political spectrum than it is to reach across the class divide. And that is, and the other thing that I meant to mention is that the most important part is that there's actually, you could say there's working class, professional class, and the 1% or 0.1%. So if the working class and the professional class were ever united on a populist idea against the 1% or 0.1%, I mean that would be that'd be pretty powerful. But I don't know what the solution is. I don't know how to bridge the class divide.
That's a good point. I'll have to let that marinate. I gotta think on that.
Me too. All right, I'll let you go, but thanks for listening.
All right, Greg, thanks so much for calling in, and I'm going to take the next caller. So these are the last three callers I'm going to take because I did just notice the time and I don't have much recording space left. So I'm going to go ahead and grab, I think Donald is next, so I'm going to take next caller. And Donald, you are on the mic.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, I spoke before. By the way, I was on coffee before. I've switched to screwdrivers, so I'm a lot calmer. But to clarify, and I'll be super brief because you got two more callers. We're getting to the end, and I already have my shot. So just briefly, definitely they would have to be way back for racism, not current white supremacists. Absolutely, you know what I mean. But the thing you were talking about so eloquently about reading it in books, and I had to get an education. I read all the books about, I was very much, but I didn't understand white privilege. I didn't understand, like, you don't say to someone, "Oh, I know exactly what you mean." No, you don't know exactly. That's the whole point. And what I will just leave with is, it's interesting. I think going to happen with folks in the suburbs anymore. And I always felt that I'd never raise my kids in the suburbs, only in the inner city or in the country. But one thing about rural folks I don't think people on the left get is that they're so gettable for this reason. When I was only a suburban kid and hadn't had a lot of life experience, hanging out in a small, medium-sized town of Syracuse, going to the country bars. And it was this fancy bar, and it was Friday. We were getting some wine for a party my friend was having, and she worked at the place. And there was people in baseball caps. There was fancy three-piece suited guys, and everybody in between, because it was a small town atmosphere where different classes of people had no choice. If you lived, in the country, the lawyers and doctors and the professional class is hanging out with the farmers and the people that, shower before work, after work, and that's something that people can get to in the country, that you might not get in suburbia where you're so separated from folks. So I just hope that Democrats, well, forget the Democrats, but people on the left will just realize, and I live in the country now, like I said, I can argue with Trumpsters and I don't just try to find areas of agreement. I jump right into why Trump's wrong and they should learn, I challenge them, but, we've got to be able to do that. And I think that people on the left need to look at the rural areas. There are so many gettable people that have drifted, and I'll stop with this. A lot of folks, this is not apocryphal, that voted for Sanders and they did not go to Clinton. They don't like Biden. They went to Trump and they'll vote for him again. So I'll leave with that,
Well said. Thank you so much for that, Donald.
Thank you. And, I meant to say before, I love what you do, to say, "Oh, I love you," that's kind of cringy. But no, I really appreciate what you do. And you're so eloquent and so thoughtful. Thanks. I'll be listening to all your stuff. Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next caller, which is Allison. So let me go ahead and take Allison. So Allison, you are on the mic. Doobie doobie doo. So you'll just have to tap the microphone down at the bottom of the app.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, sorry, I had to relaunch the app. So I've just been listening to all the different callers, and thank you so much for creating this kind of environment for people to share their stories. So I live in suburbia, in Texas, and so much of Texas has become this kind of extended suburb where people usually live in like multi-generational housing, where you have like grandma, grandpa, maybe it's grandma and grandpa's house, and that's the whole generation is living there. And like, to be so thankful to have that one space, but then there's so many other people who don't have that opportunity. So they're like really struggling and like paying like 90% of their wages in rent. Like, I'm not joking. And I think the class divide is not so much like necessarily with your neighbors or people within one particular city. It's like literally with those who have power and those who don't. So I've been like, just in my free time, I like to go to Open Secrets and like look at how much different either candidates or elected officials are making. And we're talking like $100 million. Like I don't even, like, I've never even made more than like the above poverty level in my life. Okay. And I'm educated, and have like speak 5 languages, and I've just never been able to make that kind of money. And I'm like, these people have $100 million and they're trying to tell me how to live. And I just think we should like actually hold a standard for people that we're electing to office. And once they get into office, like, why are we like, I mean, I know the reason why is the only people who can actually run for office are those who have an obscene amount of wealth, like not just a little bit of money, but people who can actually like completely quit whatever their job is, or say they're a lawyer, so they're, do they work? You know, I don't really know what a lot of lawyers do, but I don't know if it actually works sometimes. Or like people who are an accountant, like some people who say those are their jobs, like they're not actually doing the job. They're under secretaries or there are other people below them are doing the actual work, and they just show up to take credit, like the professional managerial class, essentially. And what the person before was calling, like, okay, you could go down to the one bar in the small town, and like that doesn't exist anymore. Like everyone in the small town is poor, like very poor. And like, do they even have an opportunity to go down to the bar? Because that costs money. Like it costs money to go to public spaces. Like I saw on Twitter the other day, like in America, you're only allowed to be in public if you're spending money, making money, or have money. And I think that's such a, like, as someone who is currently unemployed, I'm like, I literally have to, okay, well, I guess I'll go to Panera Bread to like, you know, give an excuse to be in public, because it's not like I can go to the library. Like no one's wearing masks at the library. And if you even have a public space, like most people do not have public spaces anymore, or never had them to begin with, either because of gentrification or just like the city was made that way. Like, so y'all are in, I assume, in Massachusetts, which I think is, you know, that's great. I've never been that far north, but I'm just, those towns are really old. A lot of cities now, especially in the South, are brand new. Like they're they were nothing. They were a field before. And so it's been corporatized since the very beginning. Like maybe you did have some houses, maybe you didn't. But for the most part, it just, like, to me, what I'm seeing in my neighborhood is like we had a house here that's now worth like 4 times as much as it was, just because our city sold the land to corporations. Like those farmers died, and then that land got sold by their descendants. And like you see a lot of new spaces like this popping up in like the Midwest and in like, you know, Texas, you know, other places that previously didn't have like an established city beforehand. So anyways, my point has gotten lost. What I wanted essentially, like, if I could hear your thoughts as someone who does live in an area that like has an old school, or like has, you know, like it has that kind of like extended amount of like very rich people, and like you can see it clearly. Like I can't see it clearly. Like I'd have to go to like really far out of my town, like towards the edge of the city, to see where like people have been moved into like I don't even know where I'm going with this. Essentially I'm real tired. I'm real tired of,
that's okay,
of the only people who are able to like get into power or to like have any influence are people who are like not just wealthy, but obscenely wealthy, like to a point where I'm like, wow, you would be first on the chopping block, you know, in revolutionary France, like, because they're making $100 million, like, and even people like who are progressive, you know, you look at it and they got their house paid off, they've got the 401k set up. Like most Americans don't have like even that base amount. So I just wish more cities would pay for people to be on city council, and like be on school board. I think that alone would just like increase the amount of power the left has, is if we actually wrote into law payment for people who are doing work for our communities, because the only people who are going to show up or going to try are the people who already have their own business or who are retired or so wealthy that like the next best thing is like to actually get power, you know, that's what they want now. And so anyways, thank you so much for creating this kind of opportunity for me to talk, and for other people to talk, and to listen what other people have to say. Like I follow a lot of people on Twitter, and I have like my friends from like, we have like a common interest. So because of our common interest, we are friends within people who are like multi-generations, who are different classes and who vote differently. Well, not really. We don't vote differently. Like, because we kind of like, there's rules. Like if you're going to be a racist asshole, you don't get to be in the friend group. Like period. Like I mean, no offense. I know someone has to make those amends, you know, but I would much prefer like trying to tackle like other things than, like, I don't know, I feel like it's a job for white men. They get paid way more than everybody else, and I feel like they should do a lot more, outreach to their comrades, who are also white men, to do some of that learning that needs to be, unlearning that needs to be done about reality. Because and they like live in their little silos, so who are they going to listen to? And I think like it's such a burden to be placed on queer, LGBT, or like, Black people or POC or poor people in general. We're asking them to like radicalize what? Like, so anyways, to everyone who had that, mention earlier, I challenge you to please do some of that work yourself. Even if it's just one person, I think that would be great. And it's good to put, praxis, right? Like, you can't ask someone else to do something unless you're willing to do it yourself. And so that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for this chatting time, and thank you like really for all your work you're doing, and like having these conversations, having like normal people kind of talk for once is great. Thank you.
Thanks so much for calling in, Allison. Well said. Well said. All right, I'm gonna take my last caller, you guys, because it's 10:37. Take next caller, and then I am going to wrap this up, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so Jay, you are on the mic. All you have to do is unmute.
Sabby?
Hey!
Okay, cool. First time caller. Never actually called to anybody aside from people that I know. Let's see. So I just wanted to be quick, and I guess one of the things I haven't heard from the left is nationalizing the oil. I mean, seems like something that people would be talking about or pushing for, or at least giving the fear into corporations that are price gouging us. So I don't understand why that's not something that at least should be mentioned, or at least should be, brought up in conversation. Something that we can do that would actually impact corporations' profits that they keep taking from us. Second is student loans are coming up. It seems like it's going to be pushed off again for another maybe 3 months, 6 months, maybe.
I don't have
Can
it,
you hear
Jay.
me?
I don't have it. I'm about to tell them I don't have it.
Wait,
Go ahead.
wait.
I'm sorry.
Oh, the student. Sorry. Oh, okay. So I don't understand why Bernie or AOC or any other like so-called progressive never made the argument for people that were considered essential workers during the time. Their student loans should have been gone. If they were so essential for the economy to run, we should have been the first ones up to be forgiven. Like, hey, I'm not gonna go to work if I'm so essential for this job and the economy. Then shouldn't my student loans be forgiven in exchange for me pretty much putting my body out there for, like, potentially dying? And so I don't know why AOC or Bernie Sanders couldn't have made that kind of like argument. And I mean, I'm sure people were gonna be like, hey, that is true. Like, why am I putting myself out there if this system doesn't really like care for me? So that's it. Just wanted to put that out there. Hopefully more people talk about it, or like it's brought up. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much for calling in. Thank you so much, Jay. Two things I want to mention before I close out. There was something that was brought up tonight that I think we do need to talk more about, and that is rural America. So Donald had brought this up. I feel like a lot of times rural America is forgotten about. And when I say rural America, I'm not talking about, I have a friend that lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm talking about, I have a friend that lives out in the boonies of North Carolina. Some of you, if you live down south, you know what I'm talking about. I think rural America has been forgotten about. There are issues and certain concerns that they need as well. And I also think about industry and where they choose to build companies. I told you this before. I never see them bring like Google or Facebook into these rural towns in America. They usually concentrate themselves on the coast with the academic elite institutions because those are the students that they usually recruit. And it's unfortunate. But I think that is a discussion that I do want to have with people who live in rural America. I know Margot is one, Princess Blanding is another one. And I want to hear about the concerns and what they have to go through. Because you want to talk about Wi-Fi connection or having difficulty with that. Okay, whatever, blah, blah. That's one little thing. But I'm talking about people who may be totally dependent on the farms, the food that they're growing in the farm, and whether or not the seasons and climate change affect whether or not they'll be able to feed their families. So I do want to hear from more people that live in rural America what life is like for them, especially when it comes to the economy. Sometimes people that live further out in those towns have longer commutes coming into work because there may not be as many jobs in the rural town that they live in. So I definitely do want to hear more from those people. And another thing that was mentioned that Jay actually just mentioned was the issue about student loans and people that were considered essential workers. Because that was something I didn't think about before, but that makes a lot of sense. Because if you were an essential worker, why didn't they at least cancel student loans for those individuals? Because you were putting your health and your life at risk at that point in time, you were, every time you went into work. So that is a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, Jay. Don, I'm glad you brought up your points. You guys all said like awesome things tonight. I have so many more questions now. So many more questions. Go ahead and I'll take that. I'll take that tip on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you so much for that tip, Michael, on Rockfin. You guys, like, I have so many more questions now, and I definitely want to, like, again, talk to more people. I see Western Mass is in the house. What's going on? What's going on, Western Mass? Like, you really have to go out to like rural areas to see the difference. And I think it's really difficult if you've never lived that life. Radical leftist agenda just said they want us poor people to die so they can use the rest of the world's resources for themselves. There was a woman that came on recently named Allison. She lives in rural America. And she was telling me that Bill Gates he's buying up all this water and resources, and Bill Gates has been stealing people's water. And not many people are talking about that. And that's scary and that's concerning. I told you guys before that Mark Cuban bought a town in Texas that he actually has no idea what he wants to do with it. Mark Zuckerberg is buying up land in Hawaii. What are they preparing for? Because I can let you know right now, when times get worse, those people are not going to try to save the rest of us. And this is why I say we need to start focusing on the class issue. We need to stop being divided over left versus right. And at the end of the day, we're going to have to help each other, because those politicians that you elected to put into office, guess what? If the economy collapses here, do you think those politicians that we voted for that's supposed to serve the American people, do you think they're going to come back and help the people in their district? Don't think so. Don't think so. They're going to save themselves. And it's unfortunate, but this is the world that we live in. And this is the country that we live in. And all I want to do is ask you guys to just educate your friends, educate your family members, just pass on the message. Just pass it on. Let everybody know, as many people as possible. That's all I ask you to do. So I'm going to go ahead and in the call-in portion, guys, thank you so much for those of you who called in. This has been a great discussion. I really appreciate it. Come back next Friday. I'll do another call-in. as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and end the room and call in. So adios, everyone. Thank you so much for chatting. Okay, so I have ended the room and call in, and I need to find a better ending for that instead of just saying thank you so much for calling. That was kind of lame. I guess I could say have a good night, keep up the fight again. I'll just say it twice. Anywho, guys, it's 10:46. It's getting past my bedtime. Just kidding. I don't have a bedtime. I don't know when I sleep. I really don't sometimes. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you guys like the call-in segment that I've added to the show. That'll just be a Friday thing, but I hope you guys like that because I really do like talking to people and I like being able to hear your voice. Other than that, guys, Monday, come back. Monday here, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Lee Camp will be here. Stay tuned for Monday. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.